Hi, on this episode of Heaven Encounters, my guest, Michael McAnally. He went into a drug and alcohol rehab center, and after he went through withdrawal, he actually strangled himself. After that, he entered into a hellish place, but something happened, and Jesus saved him from this hell. So, Michael, it's great to have you with us today.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, Michael, let's start with what happened. You were a successful musician as you are today, and you suffered from alcoholism, and then you went into the rehab center. Then you started detoxing, and what happened?
So back in 2013, I entered into a facility. I knew I had a problem. I called services and had them come get me and take me in. I spent about 30 days trying to sober up and come upon the time for where they were going to release me. They released me for a day, and within that day's time, I knew I needed to go back, and I did. And during that time, the withdrawal from alcohol was pretty severe. It was complete hell. A lot of bad feelings, a lot of really, just very, very, man, how can I put it? Just a hopeless state of consciousness, I guess you could put. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know where to go. But I knew that I was in a good place, and I was with professional people. Probably about a week into it, 2 weeks into it, I can't remember exactly. I remember sitting on a daybed, and it was like somebody turned on a light switch. Again, the best way I can describe it. All of a sudden, I was sober for the first time in years. I remember sitting on the edge of the couch, and I stood up and I freaked out. I didn't have liquor in me anymore. All of a sudden, I couldn't get my hands on a bottle. I ran into another room. I crawled into a fetal position, and the last thing I remember was seeing my shoes on my feet. It was like I was being taken over by something. I took the shoelace, wrapped it around my neck, and used it as a tourniquet. And it was lights out.
When you say you felt like you had been taken over,
yeah,
what was that like? That you had lost control, or was this actually kind of a demonic or spiritual influence?
It was a state of panic, and then everything just kind of went black. I don't know exactly what it was. I just remember grabbing my belongings and then running into this room and getting into a fetal position, and just thinking to myself, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. No. And then the next thing I know, it was lights out.
So after it was lights out, where were you at that point?
The last thing I remember, this is hard kind of talk about for the second time. The last thing I remember was just complete darkness. I was not in my body anymore. I was in complete darkness, just a realm of complete cold. And again, when I say cold, I'm not talking freezing, just by myself with nobody else around. It was one of the worst feelings, I guess you could say, I've ever had or experienced. There was nobody there to help lift me up. There was no light. There was nothing. I just remember just complete, utter alone and being cold, And then all of a sudden, I saw this light to the left, and I was drawn to it. I just remember gravitating towards it, and the next thing I know, I'm in this beautiful realm, surrounded by beautiful colors. I don't think the human mind can kind of comprehend the colors. It was what we see here intensified by 100 at least. I just remember everything like flowing watercolors, just absolutely beautiful, like a big cavern. But I could see below me, but I couldn't see feet or anything. But I could see the distance. I could see running water. I could see a tree. I could see trees in the background. Just beautiful. Just a beautiful landscape of nature. And what caught my eye was standing before me, or there before me, was, and I said this before, was this figure that was golden color. It flowed like watercolor. It had a beard. And at first I thought, I'm in heaven. Is this my dad? But upon closer look, I knew it wasn't him. My dad had passed away back in 1988 from a bad motorcycle accident. To the right of him, and I hope I say this right, to the right of him, this entity was what I call a platinum or a platinum colored looking figure, almost identical to what I was looking at in gold, but this was a platinum color. Again, like a flowing watercolor, just beautiful. And then to the right of it was a just beautiful light that I couldn't look directly at, but I knew it was there. And then again, what caught my eye to the far right was what looked like a individual pacing back and forth in a cave or a tunnel. I don't really remember the specifics, if it was a cave or a tunnel, but I remember seeing a figure walking back and forth. And years later, coming to think about it, I believe that was my father pacing, worried about me. And then I realized that I was being judged. I stood before these three beings who today I see as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. A very profound experience indeed. At the time, was I scared? No. I didn't have any consciousness of feeling. I just felt warm. Well, I did. I had a consciousness of warmth, love, just vibrating all around me. I don't remember, again, like specifics, but I do just remember just this beautiful landscape and these three beings standing in front of me. And I knew I was being judged.
So you were being judged, Michael, and yet you felt this comfort and this warmth at the same time you were feeling judged. That's a little bit of a conundrum, that, at the one hand, anyone that feels judged would feel the opposite of that, tense and nervous. But you felt comforted and you felt loved at that point.
I really did. It was overwhelming. The warmth, it's just that embracing warmth that I felt. There was no fear. There was no feeling of fear. I was very comfortable. Breathing was something I remember. It's hard to wrap your head around the magnitude of this realm that I was in. But again, I felt very comfortable and at ease.
This, going back to this figure walking back and forth that you believe to be your father. Now, was your father a believer at the time? He died when he had the motorcycle accident?
Again, he was baptized when he was about 9 years old as a Mormon. But he never really practiced the religion. Growing up, my mother's side of the family was Christian and my father's side was Mormon. On the weekends, spending time with my mother's side of the family, I remember going to Sunday school as a child. But then we would take summer vacations and drive up to my father's family and spend time with his family, who was Mormon. So I had a sense of who God and who Jesus was growing up. But as I got older, I guess you could say I took God for granted in a sense. When my father died, I was very upset that yeah, pretty much thought that God took my dad away from me, so I was holding this resentment towards him. And, understanding Christ and understanding the two different religions, I was kind of split. My father always said, that he wanted me to make a decision when I turned 18. And at the time of his death, I was around 13 or 14 years old. So I was really young. I knew of Christ, but I didn't have that relationship with him. So it was a very hard time, for me to make that decision. And, upon his request to wait until I was 18, I did. Something I don't think I mentioned the last time we were talking was I was about 18 years old staying with my grandmother, and I had made a decision to get baptized as Mormon. And I did it for my grandmother. I didn't do it for myself. I was staying with my grandmother, and this is after my grandfather had died, my father had died, his brother had passed away, and I was staying the night with her on a summer vacation. And I just said, okay, I'll do it. The next day, I was baptized, and that didn't save me from what was going to come. It was, I came back, and I came into teenage years, and of course those teenage years turned into my 20s, and then into my 30s, and right into my 40s. So when I was probably about, I want to say 24, 25, I moved to North Carolina, and that's when my drinking really took off. So yeah.
Well, it's curious about whether indeed your father may have been interceding for you in this place, this tunnel. We don't know for sure, but you had the impression that maybe he was, that maybe that was going on.
I had the impression, more or less, that he was worried, for my safety, like worried about where I was going to go. That was the feeling that I remember having, later on.
And so here you are, before the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit being judged. What happened? Were you judged? And what happened subsequent to that?
I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I knew. I just had this profound feeling like I knew that I was being judged. And I just remember, in the back of my head, it wasn't a voice. It was clear. The figure said, "It is not your time. You have unfinished business." And this long arm pointed, said, "You have unfinished business to do. This is not your time." And I was sent back. I remember waking up on the floor at the facility. I remember looking up to what I thought was either my mom or my stepdad or my wife or my stepdad. And I could hear my name being called over and over and over again, Mike, and it got louder and louder and louder. And when I finally came to, I noticed that it was a doctor and a nurse above me. And the doctor said, "Welcome back. You just died as a result of your addiction."
So you had died from your addiction, and at first you felt judged but comforted in that judgment. God told you that it's not your time, and you came back. So what happened at that point in terms of your addiction to alcohol? Were you freed of that, or what happened subsequent to your revival?
No. So let me go ahead and emphasize, I'm never going to be freed of this addiction. And I want to very much emphasize that. My spiritual connection is based on contingency, that I stay upon those spiritual beliefs that I have today. I have to practice things daily. My disease is out in the parking lot doing push-ups, waiting for me to mess up. I have a fellowship that I go to that I'm very proud to be a part of. And that helps me tremendously today. So back to your question about what happened. I remember waking up. I remember there were several people that I was trying to fight off. I don't think I wanted to come back. I remember being given something to help knock me out. And I remember going to sleep for a long period of time. And when I woke up, I was naked. I remember that. And I had a blanket over the top of me. And the nurse came in and wrapped me up and took me into another room. A few days later, my wife came and picked me up. And as we were leaving the facility, she said, "Don't look back. Don't look back, just run." So we ran. And let's see, I got home at some point, and I remember it was probably a few days later. I was right back to the ABC store. We call it the ABC store here on the East Coast. And once again, liquor had become my higher power. I couldn't live without it. I went about 8 months, and I remember having a big argument with my wife. And the next morning I woke up and I put myself right back in a facility. I remember the doctor looking at me and he goes, "I want to commend you for the 8 months of sobriety, that you tried to do. But I told you, you're not gonna get out of here unless you go through something called intensive outpatient treatment." And I had no idea what it was, but I was willing to do anything at the time to take him up on that advice and get out and try to make restitution with my life, and get on with it. Very humiliated at this point, very beaten down. I'd been through a lot, spiritually, mentally, physically, just bankrupt. I remember going to this facility and walking through and them telling me about my addiction and about the disease of addiction. And I'm walking down a hallway. There was probably like 20 to 21 of us, and we got split into different directions. And I ended up going into this room, and I ended up finding myself in the fellowship of, well, I hate to break my anonymity, but I'm going to here. I'm not going to say anything about anybody else. But I found myself in an Alcoholics Anonymous room, and I sat down. I had a hoodie over my head, and I pulled it really far down, so nobody could see my face. And I remember somebody turning around and looking at me and said, "If nobody told you they love you today, I do, and Jesus does too." And it was like that light switch got turned back on, and I was like, wow, the word love caught my attention. And it was like that light at the end of the tunnel. Somebody was holding that torch, saying, "Come on, it's okay." And I gravitated towards that. That gentleman ended up being my first sponsor. They told me to keep coming back, just keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back. And eventually I did, I'm glad to say that this September 22nd, 2022, if I stay sober one day at a time, I'm going to have 8 years of sobriety.
Congratulations.
God bless you. Thank you.
Fantastic accomplishment.
It's been a journey. It truly has.
What was the switch for you in terms of your personal relationship with Jesus as your Messiah then, Michael? What happened there?
I had a spiritual experience, and I was asked, early on if I thought that I was unique. And I wanted to run around and tell everybody what happened, but I was humiliated. I had to get honest with myself first. I had to start loving myself for who I was. This has taken a lot, for me to get this out publicly, but today I'm willing to share my story if it's going to help anybody else. If somebody was to look at me and say, "You're crazy, man. What happened?" Look, you didn't walk in my shoes. If somebody's going to say that to me, I would probably say, if you got a finger pointing at you, you've got 3 pointing back at you. What I experienced, I will never forget. I will never forget. God had pity on me, in a sense, I felt. So I make it, my life daily to try to repay back what that gentleman did to me. He turned around and said, "If nobody told you I love you, or if nobody's told you they love you, I do, and God does too." And today, God just stands for good, orderly direction, greatest order director, love, let others vent emotions. I've got all these tools now that help me on a daily, reprieve to stay sober. But what drew me to Jesus was, the fact that I remembered that those three beings were in front of me, the Son, the Father, and the Holy Ghost. And I will never forget that. Never.
Well, one of the most common misconceptions about God for a lot of people is that he's angry at them. And that's something that you're telling through your account at this cusp between heaven and hell, really. And that is that even though you were facing judgment, it was comforting because it came from a person of love and not one who was angry or wanted to condemn you, one that wanted to save you. And now you're helping others to recover from their own addictions, and whether it be alcohol or drugs, or whether it be some other form of addiction that you're helping others in your own ministry now that you have engaged in to help others recover as well.
Right. I can't keep people sober. That's one thing I want to emphasize. They have to want to do the footwork. They want to have to do the bookwork. I had to do it. I had to be beaten down just enough, to that lowest level of rock bottom. I've sponsored a lot of guys, and like I said before, only one of these guys has gone through all of the steps in my fellowship. It's not to say that I'm a bad sponsor or anything to that extent. I believe it's a learning experience for everyone. It's been nothing less of a miracle for me to have gone through what I've been through, and to be able to talk to you about this, because I was very apprehensive at first of even talking with you about this. But if my experience can help save somebody, then I've done my job. I've done exactly what I was asked to do. I'm extremely humble for that. And I'm going to say this much: God is not all condemning. He's all love. He is all love, and he showed me that.
It's the Bible's definition. One of the definitions of God is love. Pure love. That of consummate love. That is the person of love.
Yes.
Which, of course, I had experienced as well, Michael, and we've talked about that also. And we've had a number who have talked to us about their mothers praying or interceding on their behalf and saving them. Yours is the first account, actually, we've had of a father interceding for his son. So a challenge to fathers to step it up, intercede as much as the mothers do. And Michael was the beneficiary of that as well. So Michael, in your case now, having been in this space initially, would you call it hell then, when you were in the darkness and you were the void, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I'm going to have to stick with hell. And to me, it wasn't fire, brimstone. It wasn't, Satan and all that stuff. It was complete alone, the most alone somebody could ever feel. If you ever felt like the walls are caving in on you, it just felt like a constant state of walls just falling in on you. Darkness as far as dark could get. And that was my thoughts. That's my thought of what hell looked like.
We've had others, Michael, that have described it exactly that way. They've said that it was a darkness and a pit that was indescribable in terms of anything we may have experienced, to being in darkness, in a dark night or a dark closet or something of that nature. It was darkness to the very soul. That wasn't a darkness that we would experience in this world, was it?
No, not in the realm I was at. I mean, you couldn't even see. For me, I couldn't even see my hands. I couldn't see anything. All I saw was dark, and I was awake, and it was the scariest thing I've ever seen.
So, Michael, as we wrap this up, you are a successful musician. I would call you a physician as well. You're a physician in terms of helping to heal others spiritually. Musician, and you continue that. Yep. Colossians 3:23 encourages us to, whatever we do, to do it as unto the Lord. So when you play today, how do you play differently as unto the Lord?
It's all about positivity for me today. Before it was, I was doing really hardcore heavy metal. Today it's hard rock, but we do a lot of different styles of music, and I believe that music speaks to all languages. If it's able to speak to all languages, then it's love. And we got to love what we're doing in order for that to happen. So my take on it this time is a little bit different than it was before. Before, I was angry. I was mad at the world. We wanted to scream at everything. This time around, it's about everyday experiences. It's about a friend of mine that passed away. We did a song for him. We did a song called Why Me? It was about me getting sober. It's different things that we've experienced. My producer and we work together. I kind of throw him the storyline, and he'll take the storyline, structure the song out, and we'll really decide on which way we want to go with it. So that's kind of the direction we're taking today. And I prayed hard, when I got back into music, if I was going to meet the right individual, and God delivered. He really did. I consider the guy that I work with a miracle too. So, good stuff.
Well, I've listened to some of your music, Michael, and I love it. I mean, I didn't think I would be a fan of hard rock music, and you started with a kind of Metallica type music, but I really enjoyed it because you really did it as unto the Lord, and those who might not be attracted by worship music that we would experience typically in church may be attracted by your music, and then you have that opportunity, as you've done and continue to do, and sharing the love of Jesus Christ to those through this particular genre of music and performance.
I got to say, hats off to my producer. He's the one that actually structures the song out. I'm a bass player. I've been playing bass for years. I started out on drums at 5, guitar probably around 13 or 14, and I've been playing bass ever since. So hats off to my producer, because he does the majority of the music. So,
well, thank you so much for being with us today, Michael. You've truly inspired us with your story.
Thank
you. We truly appreciate it. And for those of you who are in Christ Jesus, be of good cheer, because heaven is in your future. Until next time, take care and God bless. Thank you for watching this episode of Heaven Encounters. If you'd like more information, you can go to Randy Kay Ministries at randykay.org. Take care and God bless.